What is up, bros? Josh here, and today's video is all about the Tier 8 Russian tech tree battleship, the Vladivostok. Now, this ship is currently work in progress, so stats are subject to change, and they will probably change before we see it live. Although, let's dive into the ship, compare it to other Tier 8s, show some gameplay, as well as show some interesting new thing we've seen with this ship, and that is the 12-kilometer Russian battleship buff. However, the hit points of this tier are pretty damn high. This ship itself is obviously a very big ship. It's got a lot of tonnage, one of the bigger battleships at this tier, but 73,600 for the life pool. The only thing that comes even close to this is the Vanguard, which is another tier 8 battleship. So you are the biggest health pool at this tier, unless I'm randomly forgetting something here. Obviously, I'm not counting survivability extra battleships. We don't count those, but the health pool is extremely large, which you're going to need because of the lack of survivability when it comes to the style of ship. Armor on this ship is pretty damn solid. You will be bow tanking a lot of this, and a lot of it comes from the 32mm plating, 40mm the deck armor, which does get beat up a little bit by CV, so be careful. Although you have some decent AA, and we can spec a tad more into it, but as well as that 200mm plating right there, so you aren't going to get cheeked as much. Bow tanking is how this thing kind of works. Obviously, seeing some thick armor on that as well, and then some extra plating behind. 250mm, pretty dang solid. Found that this thing was an absolute beast if you were bow tanking into stuff, and really they had a tough time doing anything. However, if you are giving up your side, if we take away the armor layout, you are a pretty flat side and you will get absolutely obliterated. But if you can keep that bow in, obviously it's got a big old nose here, but if you keep that bow in, it's really hard to do much, if anything, to you. So you are something that people are going to have to deal with, and you are a big bad battleship. Now the guns themselves, 33-second reload, which is on the higher end for this tier at 406mm. So this is pretty standard, what we see on a lot of tier 8 battleships. However, maximum dispersion 235, one of the higher ones, because the range is only 19 kilometers. So what this actually means, though, is outside you are going to get pretty mediocre dispersion. I think the sigma is around 1.7 or something like that on the lower end. But what you do is you can get a buff on getting within 12 kilometers, which we'll get into a second. Secondary as well. Oh, also the turrets are pretty damn fast, 27 seconds, just comparing it to a normal battleship, which is 45 seconds. So on the faster end, which means you could drop extra marksmanship if you want, although I like it. I like those fast turrets, and I like fast battleships. Secondary, not really going to be focusing around too much of these, although if you are getting into a brawling situation, what these are meant to quote unquote be aggressive playstyle, they do definitely pop out, although we really aren't running this. I believe this is with an AFT captain, so we're getting a tad more range, but you're not going to be writing home about the secondaries. It's all about those main battery guns. Again, main battery 19 kilometers. AA was actually pretty decent. However, let's just check out my captain really quick, and I'll show you kind of why. I tend, when I am running a test or work in progress ship, I tend to run a bit more of an AA build. Surprise, surprise, the test ship gets focused a tad more. But I'm running preventive maintenance, adrenaline rush, high alert or basic survivability, concealment, picking up AFT, BFT, and then extra marksmanship. So normally what I would do with this ship, and one thing I definitely notice about this ship, is that this is a big deck. There's lots of wood here that can get lit on fire, and you are a big ship. And one of the main things about this ship is you are a Russian battleship. So one of the things that sets us apart is you are the only battleship line, as we've seen this in the October Revolution as well. You only get so many actual repairs, 4 of these. This is something why Superintendent is so strong on this ship. So with only a certain amount of charges coming from repairs, what I would normally do on a normal build when it comes to this ship is I would probably drop AFT for fire prevention, and then drop BFT for Superintendent. However, with the increase to extra marksmanship, with the turrets being relatively quick anyways, that is with that, you could even potentially drop extra marksmanship for high alert. And one of the main things I'm talking about is this is a perfect line. It's basically the best thing that could have ever happened is the commanders that come with the Russian ones, as you can get them, the brothers. These buff both high alert, preventive maintenance, and extra marksmanship. So if you haven't picked up one of these, both 35,000 coal as well as 1,500 doubloons, these captains are fantastic for this entire line. So if you haven't picked up one, and when these drop, definitely worth picking those up, because extra marksmanship is great, high alert is fantastic, preventive maintenance can't go wrong. So I didn't really see the guns going out too much. when I was playing this. But again, I would probably drop. You definitely want to pick up Superintendent, and then Fire Prevention isn't terrible. Because it's a big ship, you will be getting lit on fire. I believe I was going a Bowen fight against a Jean Bart, and he got 3 back-to-back double fires, and that was just on my front here. So a big area to light on fire, all of this, second fire here, and then obviously it's kind of all in the front, as you can see, so there's a lot of front areas. This is where the majority of your fires will be in this area. So it was actually kind of brutal. It kind of almost looks like a speedboat if you look at the ship itself. Actually looks kind of badass, but it is a big nose that gets lit on fire. So what am I talking about with the 12-kilometer range when it comes to the ship? Oh, one last thing. Also, the radar is the first time we've ever seen anything with this type of radar. Also, we'll go over the upgrades really quick. Concealment Expert, Damage Control System Mod 2. We definitely want a Survivability. This, we could grab AFT, or not AFT, the AA guns if you really want, if you're seeing lots of those. Although, with the Dispersion, aiming system, I would recommend. It's fantastic. Picking up Damage Control System Mod 1, and then Main Armament Mod 1, as well as taking the Premium Damage Control. You definitely want that. Increase on the heal, another one of those. But the radar is something that's unique, although you don't need to take this. You could take fighter if you want, but the radar is the first time you've ever seen specialized radar, which only picks up battleships and CVs. 15-kilometer range, kind of a normal 40 seconds. Actually, normal 40 seconds. It's a long duration 40 seconds. But it only picks up battleships and aircraft carriers. Now this, a lot of people are calling this useless. This is extremely useful, actually, when getting into brawling situations, and let's say there's a lot of islands and you don't know where a battleship is. Not so much you're going to use it on CVs, but really getting positioning of battleships and getting aggressive, because you will be hitting the W key more than probably any other battleship line in this game, because you want to get within that 12-kilometer range. Also, this will shine in Cyclones. I would consider it almost overpowered when it comes to Cyclones. It basically gives you 2 salvos on a battleship that has no idea where you are. So that's a bit of a bummer in my opinion. Don't really like the idea of this type of radar, but also Cyclones, Storms, the Storm Fronts, any of those, you will have a tad of an advantage on ships because you will see them and they will not see you. Now you may ask yourself why I'm talking about some 12-kilometer buff, and that's exactly what I'm talking about here, is that the Russian battleship line will get this unique style of play, which the Soviet battleships encourage aggressive play style, which I love. We've all had that battleship that is sniping from 24 kilometers away, and it grinds our gears. They end the game full life at the bottom of the team. This is not going to happen with the Russian battleships. 1, the range isn't really even that good anyway. 2, they don't really have spotter planes. And 3, they want to get, you are fiending for a 12-kilometer, sub 12-kilometer fight. And the reason why is because of this right here. The main battery accuracy at close range can be compared to that of cruisers, and it is so true. But at longer range, it can be worse than other battleships. So something that I kind of compare this to is longer range. You feel like a Roma that is kind of drunk. If you've ever played the Tier 8 battleship, Roma, really inaccurate, inconsistent. Although you still are a battleship. You can still absolutely destroy stuff, but you really are inconsistent and you want to get in close. And then once you get within that 12-kilometer threshold, you basically turn into a Zhao or Hindenburg, and there's little to no dispersion. We were making a joke about how the Sigma on this goes from like 1.6, 1.7, or whatever it is on this one right here, to like 7, because it goes from terrible dispersion outside of the 12-kilometer range to just absolute lasers when it gets in close. I think the 12 kilometers is probably a tad too far away. I could see this getting balanced throughout the entire process, but still, we'll show you an example right here of what the actual 12-kilometer buff does and how you can change your dispersion levels going against ships and pushing in. So here we are in the training room with the Vladivostok and a bunch of Moskvas lined up, some cruisers that you'll probably see in your matchmaking, and we have them set up at 16 in kind of intervals of about 2 kilometers or so. Now, with the buff to the dispersion, you will actually see this. Now, outside of 12 kilometers, this is just the normal battleship dispersion that you'll see on a normal basis, and we'll start with the farthest one away, kind of work our way in, and kind of show you the example of the buff that this thing actually gets with this new Russian battleship increased dispersion. So as you can see right there, it's a good example of the normal Sigma, the normal dispersion that you'll see on the ship, yet it is still a battleship, so you will continue to get citadels. It's not something that's new. It's not like these citadels don't happen. So that is kind of the normal dispersion you will get throughout the entire thing. But let's kind of move up a tad closer. That was the outside 16 or outside the 12 kilometer range. So that's kind of your normal style. But when you start to get a little bit closer and start to get within that range, and you actually can click on to something that is within 12 kilometers, this is when it gets a little nutty. So just remember what it used to look like right there. Let's do a nice little broadside salvo against that. And something's a little different with that dispersion. So definitely a bit different there. You could tell that instead of the dispersion being all over the place, shells being all over the place, once you get within that range of the 12 kilometers, it's a tad different. And that's one of my biggest kind of beefs when it comes to this ship. I think that may be a tad too strong. I would like to see it a tad closer, maybe 7 or 8 kilometers, maybe even 9 kilometers. But even with something pretty close to the range right here, we'll do one last salvo on this, which is still technically within the range of the 12 kilometers. Again, pretty dang good dispersion right along the waterline, and you will definitely be punishing some cruisers. But again, outside the normal dispersion, still able to get those citadels, and definitely within, it's going to be a bit more deadly. Obviously, getting 6 citadels on those 2 salvos. I just want to show you guys a good example of the inside 12 kilometers and then outside 12 kilometers. Now here we are in game with the Vladivostok, and before I get some grief, I always get grief, I'm posting a top tier gameplay. This is something that has done amazing and literally every game I've had it in. It's insane. You can bully tier 10 ships, you can bully everything. This just shows how insane and how laughable this ship can be, especially even when you get top tier. So this is definitely this game is not out of the ordinary for getting you into a situation. This is just the best example of how insane. It had some good examples of within or outside the actual range, the 12 kilometer range, and inside the 12 kilometer range. So I thought this was a good one to show off what this ship could actually do. So first of all, I enjoy playing this ship. The reason I enjoy playing this ship because I like to play battleships aggressively. Now, definitely I will snipe from here and there, maybe holding down a flank, but I love pushing into the battle. And I love the idea of kind of a ship that's good at battle tanking and good at kind of, if you play it correctly, can be extremely they're extremely strong. I love the idea of this ship. However, I think this is a tad too intense right now, and the main thing is around that 12 kilometer range. I think 12 kilometers is a tad too long, tad too generous on that range, because really, if you really think about what this thing is doing, it's promoting a aggressive play style, as are and here's some good examples of what you can get from long range on the Cleveland or some other stuff, is you will end up missing a lot, but it doesn't really matter. You're kind of pushing in, you're trying to get into anything. But what I mean is, this 12 kilometer range, you're going against other stuff that is known for being strong against brawling, or known for being good within close range. And the main thing that is kind of comes up when you're talking about that is the German battleship line. Now, the German battleship line is a line that has continued to just get weaker and weaker over time. It is still a fan favorite for many people. Secondaries are just amazing to play with. They're just so much fun. But really, that line has gotten weaker and weaker over time. And what this ship is kind of doing, what I fear it is kind of doing, is it just is a better version of a brawler. Now, definitely what you don't want to do is block all line of sight when it comes to the cruiser that is a radar cruiser. With the Harikaze, not knowing how spotting works. A bit of a bummer right here, but it's alright. As long as that gotcha doesn't murder us, we should be okay. And as I say, worse smoke NA. Feels bad, man. But he does end up firing, and we'll get some damage in here. But here is the 12 kilometer dispersion, and we're going to give him a little smack right there and just keep pushing forward. This is a line that it promotes hitting W, and really there's a lot of battleships that just don't really do that. But again, let's talk about what this ship kind of promotes, and kind of the example of what it's promoting pushing in, which I like, but there's other lines that already do that, and I feel like this just automatically replaces that, because 12 kilometers means that you are already in that phase. You're already in their secondary range. There's not really that many secondary style battleships that that have a secondary range longer than that. So instantly, if you get within that range, you're a better brawler than the quote-unquote brawling line. Now, here's a good example too. This Hipper, he's going to start getting some range on us, and you'll see some difference. Now, you will get some dispersion like that. It is still RNG, so not everyone is like a laser. But you'll see a good example of us getting the buff and then not getting the buff when it comes to the ship. But anyways, back to kind of the German battleship. That's one of the biggest things, and I feel like that line already is just becoming more and more obsolete. It went through tons of changes of just getting picked on by AP bombs, getting picked on by kind of everything, and it's just continued to get weaker. So now World of Warships is making another line that kind of is better at doing what that line was already. That's the only thing that line had left. And really, the secondaries are annoying when it comes to this, but a lot of them won't really even pen because of your deck armor, that 32mm plating, especially if you do get within that range. You just pump out a ton of damage, and they can't really pen you because they tend to have a smaller caliber gun. So this is something that World of Warships tends to do, and I feel like this potentially with the 12-kilometer range on the buff could cause a problem with, is they tend to do what's called a power creep, and that is something we've kind of seen with a lot of destroyers getting stealthier and stealthier, and now we could potentially see just the extinction of German battleship because there's no real reason, because why take a weaker brawling battleship into the fight other than just liking to play the ships themselves. So that's here's some normal dispersion outside of the range. As you see, it's kind of all over the place. It's still decent though, and you can still get citadels or big pens. It's not like it's magically doesn't turn into a battleship outside 12 kilometers. But if the ship was just and this is something that's come up too, is I've gone over a lot of the ships on this line already, and I feel like they're overly strong. But if you took away that 12-kilometer buff, it's kind of just a mediocre battleship. It's a battleship that can tank decently, and if you tank and you kind of go in, and sure, you can do a little bit, the A is decent, you can shoot down some planes, but overall, I would say like nothing too exciting. The thing that you have to talk about when it comes to this is just the ability to absolutely smash within close range, and that means everything. You smash DDs, you smash. There was a game where I think we were playing the tier 7. We just went back to back to back salvos. I think we killed 3 destroyers in a row, and just dropping them for 7 8K salvos, and there's nothing they could have done because of that 12-kilometer range. You are constantly looking to get closer to things and to get within that range, and sometimes even holding your salvo. I don't think I do here, but sometimes even holding your salvo to get within that range. Now, there are plenty of times too, as we can still, obviously, outside that 12 kilometers, you can still hit that, but that's kind of that normal dispersion. That would be super consistent. So if I had to judge that ship just on that, there would be, I would say, hey, these ships need buff, they kind of suck. But that 12-kilometer range is just out of this world intense, and really, I'll be honest, they're fun to play. It's fun, and that's one thing I think a lot of us have had in the past, is pushing into ships and not really getting rewarded. It feels nice to basically tank with the battleship, push into the enemy, and actually get rewarded. So I do feel like this is a fantastic idea. I like this idea. It is kind of weird that the idea for this line is on a ship that only has so many repairs, but it still is. It's a fun play style. Getting into that range and getting into situations where you want to hit the W key because you want that buff on dispersion and you want to do that style salvos on broadside hippers. You know, it's fun. I'll be honest. These are kind of, this buff is a unique one. I find it kind of funny that it's a Russian one, but it's a lot of fun. It really, really is. So I'm optimistic about this line. I like this buff, although I feel like 12 kilometers, that's the biggest thing I'm going to harp on. I feel like these ships honestly are pretty close to being balanced, but the thing that's really causing a lot of trouble for me is that 12-kilometer range. If you just took the ship out itself, it's not really anything that special. You know, it's relatively tanky. It's somebody asks, how do, in the chat, like, how do you like the Vladivostok? And yeah, I like it. That's good shit. Yeah, it's a good ship. So he has you drop in that little salvo. Now, obviously, somebody's gonna say, "Well, blah blah blah. I can do that in any battleship. This is something," but like, there's nothing this Vanguard could do. There's absolutely nothing it could do. Now, if I felt like maybe 10 kilometers might be low enough. Maybe 9 would be a bit nicer. Maybe 9 or 10, something around there. I feel like, though, if this is going to promote going broadside and being a brawler, there's no real reason that it should outrange secondaries. I feel like if you are going to be brawling in the game, you should have to kind of feel the wrath of another brawling line, which would be the German line. So German, French obviously are the two main secondaries. I actually didn't know if the Vanguard was really that citadelable, so we did some science here. I remember saying in chat, I don't know if I can citadel this guy, but we're going to use our cruiser level dispersion right along the waterline, and yes, they can be fairly easy citadeled. So and one of the things with this ship, though, is the actual radars themselves. This is something that is going to be very situational. There will be situations where you just won't even use it. You don't really need it. But it's so nice when it's there because it's a great ace in the sleeve to have. One thing, we had a lot of people in chat. Obviously, we play this all live on twitch.tv/mejosh. You can come check us out there. We play them all live on stream. It's something that you'll probably, most of your games you'll never click, but then it's nice to have it when it's there. It's just like maybe like an AA consumable. A lot of people run that instead, run Hydro instead of AA. I always like having AA because I like fending off the planes, yet you won't use it every game. This is a bit more, I would say, a bit more specialized in what it actually does. But still, when you want that information or something's hiding around a corner and you want to get in and push, let's say that you're pushing around an island into some ships and you need to know where the other battleships are heading, it's fantastic to get that information on a consumable that you have. Also, I haven't had the pleasure of using it on a Cyclone, so that's when this thing is really going to shine. But that's also one of the situations that I kind of don't like it being super gimmicky like that. Already, if you've ever seen any of my streams, I can't stand Cyclones. I hate them. And not only does this ship get a buff within 12 kilometers, so anything it's going to find within a Cyclone is going to just die. Like, it's dead. It's just going to die. It'll also have the ability to shoot at stuff, probably 2 salvos with its radar. It is a 40-second radar, even with a 33-second reload without adrenaline rush. You can get probably 2 salvos out. So I don't like something being that extremely gimmicky. I'm not a fan. But it is what it is, and you'll have an advantage in that route. But the rest of this game is us just basically getting within that 12 kilometers. As you've seen, I basically haven't let off the gas besides the one corner where the Fiji, I let those torps go in front of me. I just haven't let off the gas, and you're not really going to. So overall, with this ship and this line, I like that it's a unique playstyle. Now, I always give props to Wargaming for finding unique things to bring. We've seen a lot of uniqueness with a lot of the last lines that we've seen, kind of setting themselves apart. This being the aggressive battleship, but we kind of already have those, and I'm afraid that this might just push those away. So they have to be kind of careful. Again, I really like the aggressive playstyle. I like that they can tank. I like that they have this uniqueness and fun. They're fun, and I like getting rewarded for playing a ship correctly. I feel like there's not enough of that in this game. You go in and you shoot 8 kilometers along the waterline and you bracket the hell out of the ship. This is going to give you some broadside or some insane cruiser level dispersion. And I was gonna let my team get that, but we'll end up getting that kill too. Some cruiser level dispersion on a battleship. So, but when you give a battleship this much accuracy, it is very dangerous. And that's something that I always am a tad And I mean, how is he supposed to do anything against that dispersion? You have to be extremely careful when you give battleships this much accuracy, especially from this far away. So again, a very fun game. It's a fantastic ship right now. Obviously too overpowered, but I think the majority of the overpoweredness that I see is coming from that 12-kilometer range on that buff of dispersion. If they change that, which I think is something they'll probably end up doing, I hope that they don't change a bunch of other stuff and then leave that buff. Who knows what they'll end up doing. Again, this is work in progress, so stats are subject to change. I think the problem lying with that is that 12 km range. I know I've said that probably 10 times, so, but it's just, in my opinion, the biggest problem. I think the ship itself is solid. By itself, I don't think it would even be good enough, but with that buff, that is the part that's kind of picking away at me at being a problem. So overall, fantastic ship, really fun game. We were slaying in basically everything, but this just kind of showed a good contrast of the dispersion with and without the buff, as well as just being able to non-stop go forward. This is an absolute terror of a battleship right now. So a tad too strong in my opinion. But anyways, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.